So how is everyone? Good? Good. Weather's... Oh, how was my exam? I got 100%. Wow. Thank you. Oh, man. I felt a little sick to my stomach going into that exam. I've had that professor before, and his tests are really hard, but I felt prepared this time. So thank you for accommodating my taking the day off last week. So thank you. Okay. So I said that we would talk about Nirvana this week, but I want to review a little bit. So it'll be Samsara and Nirvana. Mostly we've been talking about samsara and the problems of samsara. So I know one mistake that people often make in thinking about what samsara is thinking that it's a place. So first of all, what is the word for samsara in Vietnamese? Yeah, okay. So people often think that samsara is a location, and it's this location, this place, this world in which we live. In fact, I've seen it translated as the world of suffering or the realm of suffering, but that's not really correct. It isn't a location, it's a state of being, right? So samsara, we experience samsara, this state of suffering, when the mind grasps at and clings to impermanent things, thinking that this is the way to genuine happiness, this is the way to overcome suffering. And so we in fact cause our suffering. That is the state of samsara. It's like that analogy I used a few weeks ago, the man on the hot day enjoying the warm or the cool breeze, and he's grasping at the wind, and he wants to hold on to it and put it in his pocket and keep it. It's crazy, right? You can't do that. That's what we do all the time. We're constantly grasping at the wind and trying to hold on to it. And then trying to suck happiness out of whatever we think we can hold on to. And it never works. So, as I always say, we get what we want, and then we lose it, and so we suffer. We get what we want, and it makes us happy for a while, but then its ability to give us happiness wears off. And so we're dissatisfied. We have to go look for something else. Or we spend our whole lives chasing after what we want, and we never get it. And so we suffer. Or we're forced to face things that we don't want, and we suffer. So there's this underlying, the Buddha said that there's this underlying, all-pervasive dissatisfaction. Suffering is kind of a strong word, right? But there's this underlying dissatisfaction that characterizes our existence as ignorant, sentient beings. And that's why we're constantly doing this grasping. So then the opposite side of that would be nirvana. So this is the state of no more suffering. So again, this isn't a place. Sometimes people ask me, is nirvana Buddhist heaven? No. Even the Pure Land, which is almost like heaven in a sense, it's not permanent. We've talked about this before too, I think. So you're chanting Namo Ida Phap, Namo Ida Phap, Namo Ida Phap. So Namo Amitabha Buddha, devotion to Amitabha Buddha. And the idea is that through the grace of Amitabha Buddha, one will be reborn in the Pure Land. But the Pure Land is not some permanent escape from suffering. What do you do in the Pure Land? You study the Dharma, you practice the Dharma. And then you either go from there to enlightenment, or perhaps in the future you'll be reborn as a human again, as a disciple of the next future Buddha, Maitreya. So Shakyamuni Buddha was the last one. The next Buddha will be Maitreya. And so you'll practice as his disciple, and then from that human life you may achieve enlightenment. So even the Pure Land is not some permanent escape. So nirvana is when the mind stops grasping and clinging, when the roots of the afflictive emotions, such as anger, are no longer present. You know how often if you weed your garden, you pull weeds in the yard or you weed your garden, the roots are still underground and so the weed just comes right back? So a lot of people, they're pretty good at keeping anger in check. or you don't think of them as the kind of person who could get angry. But unless they're enlightened, the roots of anger are still there. It's still possible. So this is what we mean. When even the possibility of giving rise to anger, greed, jealousy, and so on, when that is completely gone, really completely gone, that's part of what it means to be in nirvana. So when there is no more attachment and aversion, so ignorance is gone, and that means the grasping and pushing away, that the constant activity that we engage in, trying to find bits of happiness and avoid the bits of suffering we experience, when that is gone. When the mind no longer relies on anything impermanent for its happiness, right? This is just another way of saying the same thing. When we're not leaning on some dream of the perfect job situation, we're not relying upon money and so on for real, lasting, perfect, complete happiness. And when the mind is pure, calm, and peaceful. These are words used to describe nirvana itself. Nirvana is a state of being calm and peaceful. I think I've used this analogy in the past. A clear as glass, still crystal mountain lake. When the mind is in this state, that is nirvana. So in other words, it's the complete end of ignorance. When we've completely gotten rid of ignorance, that is nirvana. Well, actually, there are different schools. I'll jump ahead here. There are different schools that see nirvana in slightly different ways. Some Buddhist traditions say that when you achieve enlightenment in this body, that is the same as achieving nirvana. Others say, well, no, you achieve enlightenment as a human being, but then you just finish your life. It's not quite nirvana. You finish your life as a human being, and then when your body passes away, then you're in nirvana. So different Buddhist traditions will describe this in different ways. So related to this second to last point here, achieving nirvana means that one no longer creates the karma to be reborn in the cycle of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So the Buddha achieved enlightenment in this life, but he still had, I guess we could say he still had some karma to continue living physically, but he wasn't creating any new karma that would pull him into a new rebirth, because he had completely uprooted ignorance. So there was no need for him to be reborn. There was no magnet pulling him back into a physical body. So this is nirvana. So we've touched on these things before, but let me ask you a question. What is the difference then between samsara and nirvana? Simply put, how would you describe it?
Attached to impermanent things which make us suffer.
Right, that's samsara. But if you could put it kind of in a sentence or two, what is the difference between samsara and nirvana?
The difference between samsara and nirvana may be no more ignorance.
No more ignorance, that's another way to put it. All of these are correct. What you're saying is correct. Maybe I didn't word this question very well. What I'm really trying to elicit is the understanding that the difference between samsara and nirvana is here. The difference between samsara and nirvana is our perception. Right. That's the difference between samsara and nirvana, really. It's just our perception. So this is a question that sometimes comes up. So does an enlightened being, did the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, after his enlightenment, when he was looking at houses and trees and mountains and rivers, what did he see? Was his physical vision somehow different? When he touched things, what did he experience? He experienced exactly what we do. But his perception of that experience was different. That's the difference. So a Buddha touches the table and he feels wood. On a warm day, I bet it gets, because the paint, a little sticky. He would experience the exact same thing. But somebody else might pick up this wooden table on a hot day when it's a little sticky and go, ah, you know, and then get mad about it. Stupid table, whatever, get angry at the table, right? Buddha wouldn't do that. Okay, and so then I have another question, and we've talked about this a little bit before. So if all of this is about our perception, about changing our perception, so what's the point of chanting and bowing and participating in Buddhist holidays?
Show respect.
Respect, that's one thing, yes. So we're showing respect to the Buddha. Sometimes people think with all the bowing that we do at Buddhist temples that we're worshiping Buddha. I don't use that word. Some Buddhist groups do. I don't use that word worship. We're showing respect to the Buddha because he went before us. He achieved enlightenment, and then he did all the hard work of teaching the Dharma so that we could learn it today. Why else?
The purpose of chanting is to learn or to remind ourselves what the Buddha has taught and to learn about the Dharma.
Yeah, especially originally. Remember, the Buddhist tradition was not written down. It was an oral teaching. And so people memorized the teaching, and then they taught younger generations, the later generations, orally. And that's what the chanting was. Part of it was just to memorize information, right? And then to work with that information, to understand the Dharma. So this is part of the reason why we do chanting. But all of this, chanting and bowing and participating in Buddhist holidays and things, all of this is about turning our minds toward the Dharma. We go out and live our lives, and what are we worried about? Oh, I'm hungry. I want a soda. Oh no, I have a test on Monday. Oh no, the price of gas is out of control. This is most of what our thinking is concerned with. This or that problem. But we come to the temple, we stop. We calm the mind. We calm the mind and we bow. And then we chant. We do some meditation. We make Dharma friends. Part of this is just about building community. There's a story where the Buddha's attendant, his helper, his cousin Ananda, said something like, Buddha, would it be true to say that part of the holy life is about spiritual friendships? And the Buddha said, no, that's completely incorrect. Never say that. 100% of the holy life is about spiritual friendships. Now, in this case, the holy life, he's talking about the lives of monks and nuns, but this applies to all of us. There's all this focus on sort of master-disciple relationships, and me and the Buddha. But part of what we're doing with our temples and our Buddhist holidays is creating that community with other Buddhists. Because if we spend our time with people who encourage us, I'm using sort of an extreme example, but if we spend our time with people who encourage us to drink and gamble and fight and everything, well, we're just creating all sorts of negative karma, right? But if we spend time with other people who are committed to the Dharma, we will be encouraged and helped in our own study and practice of the Dharma. Right? So part of this is about creating community too, but really all of this that we do is about turning the mind to the Buddha, turning the mind to the Dharma. And then hopefully, the more we do that, over time, when we're not at the temple, when we're not around our Dharma friends, we will still have the Dharma in mind. And that will shape our behavior, what we think and say and do, and help us stay on the path and head towards Nirvana, out of samsara. Okay. So now I'll ask if there are any questions. I think you had a hand up, yes.
What is Dharma?
I'm sorry?
What is Dharma?
Oh, I'm sorry. Dharma is the word that we use for the Buddha's teaching. It literally means something like law. In fact, I know in at least some East Asian countries, the same character that's used for Dharma is used in the word for secular law. So it has that kind of meaning. So it's like the truth. Yeah, that's what Dharma means. So in fact, often you'll hear people talk about, instead of using the word Buddhism, they'll say Buddha Dharma, meaning the Buddha's teaching. Yeah. Yes?
Understanding the fact that if we attach to impermanency, we suffer. But do you think that, is it true to say that people like top leader like Obama, when they use those top leaders, they have special mission when they come to Earth, not just like us, you know, a regular person. Do you think that they have special mission to be a top leader?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think, well, we all have our karma, and part of some people's karma is to have power. And then it kind of, you know, the karma that they create going forward depends on what they do with that power. I think that we all have a special mission. It's just my special mission and your special mission may not make us famous. And that mission is to let go of ignorance, to wake up, and to be of benefit to other sentient beings. Yeah, that I would say is the most special mission. And a lot of people who follow that path, who pursue that mission, we never know their names. We never hear their names. Yeah. That's an interesting question. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question, but I don't know how to put it in the sentence.
Okay.
I've been having wondering for the last 2 days. Like I said, before the human beings appeared on the earth, before that there were no human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So what made that world just have other life but human beings? What caused them, what kind of karma that caused them just, why it's a certain period that the human beings starting living in the earth, but not before.
So what caused the karma for there to be a planet, this planet with life on it, but not human life, and then what karma brought human life here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so we have the karma to be reborn in different realms of existence, right? Hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, human beings, and then there are the lower gods and the higher gods, right? These are all mortal beings who are born and die and are reborn again. So there was just a period historically when there were beings who had karma to be reborn as birds and insects and dinosaurs and whatever on this particular planet. And so beings who had the karma to live a human-like, intelligent life, this is my interpretation of what I understand from what I've been taught over the years, would be born in that form on some other planet, in some other universe, even. And so, I mean, I can't really say why human life arose on this planet at a particular time, but we're all here now as human beings because we have similar karma to experience life on this planet as human beings. That's why we're here. Does that make sense? Like, I can't tell you historically what was the karma for no human life before and then human life later. But what happens is, let's say all human beings die on this planet. This is a question. What happens if human life disappears? Well, we would just be reborn in some other form somewhere else. And if we had the karma to live a human-like existence, that's the form in which we would be reborn on some other planet, maybe some other universe.
Do you think that being reborn in the human being's forms, those states that can be that have good karmas to be reborn in as human beings? But as of the population is keep going up, how do we explain that?
Okay, so the question is, it takes a lot of really good karma to be reborn as a human being. But now the population is expanding on the planet, so what's going on? I've heard two explanations for this. The traditional one is that the further we get away from the time of the Buddha, the less good karma it takes to achieve a human birth. So this isn't as wonderful a time in terms of the Dharma as being born in the time of a Buddha. That's one explanation I've heard. The other is that, like I said, human beings may die from, disappear from this planet in the future, but maybe there's some other planet in some other universe where there's human-like life, and they all die. And so then there are beings who still have karma to be born, and so they're born here. And in the future, maybe human beings in the future, their karma will be to get wiped out by an asteroid hitting the planet or something. But then, if they have the karma to live in some physical body, like a human body, they'll be reborn somewhere else in some sort of similar form. Does that make sense? Yeah. Those are hard questions, though. Go ahead.
So could it be also like, since we can be born as animals, and so could that be an explanation to, I mean, sort of like, since we can be reborn as anything, and the animals could just be reborn as human beings, and is that, or how does it like determine what get to be born as animals, and how do we get to be reborn as human beings, other than the explanation like in class, there's different variations?
Right. Okay, so then basically the question is, how is it that we move between the 6 different realms of cyclic existence, of birth, old age, sickness, death, and rebirth? So everyone's karma is incredibly complicated. But basically, the simplest answer is that the primary karma for being reborn as a hell being is excessive anger and hatred. The primary karma for being reborn as a hungry ghost is excessive greed and attachment. The primary karma for being reborn as an animal is excessive ignorance. We all have ignorance, but beings who are born as animals have even more ignorance. And then the particular karma for being reborn as a human is morality, good moral ethics.
5 precepts.
Right, well, the 5 precepts, right. So living in accordance with that. And then the karma for being reborn as what we call a demigod or one of the lower gods. It's a combination of great generosity, but also pride. And then the higher gods, it's even greater generosity. That's the karma for being reborn as one of the higher gods. So, in this life, let's say there's someone in this life, and because of their past karma, the mix of all their karma, they have the karma to be reborn as a human being in this life. But then in this life, they shut out any message that challenges the view that clinging to things, chasing after happiness and temporary things, for example, I'm being maybe a little too specific, they shut anything that challenges that view. They're like, no, shut up, go away, I want money, I want fame, I want power. Maybe in their next life they'll be reborn as an animal. This is really, really important. The state of your mind at the time of your death is very important. Because maybe you came across as the most peaceful, wonderful person your whole life, always smiling, but as you're heading into death, you're screaming and shouting, and you're angry about something that someone did to you when you're 10 years old. You are creating, that will affect your next life. Those last moments will affect your next life. So this is another piece of our Dharma practice. We're training our minds in part for the moment of our death. Because as we're heading into the next life, we want to have a calm and peaceful mind, thinking about the Dharma, because that will have a powerful effect, shaping our next existence as well. Did I answer your question? Okay. Yes?
I heard my mom said that the person, when they die, when they were like in the middle, like when they die,
Yeah.
you can tell where that person heading to the next life. kind of like my mom said on the head it is warm,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest of the body is like cold, and that doesn't get to like the God kind of level. And the heart is warm kind of things become human and like some sort like that. Is it true? And
I don't know if that's true or not. I know in the Tibetan tradition they say if your consciousness exits, there's this spot on your skull, the three parts of the skull come together, right? So when a baby is born, the skull is kind of soft and then it hardens over time. If that opens and your consciousness exits through the top of your head, that's supposed to be very, very good. But if it leaves through your nose or your ear or your mouth or something, it's not so good. And so as someone's preparing to die, it's best if you, instead of holding their hand or something, as they're losing consciousness, you touch the very top of their head. You just sort of rub this spot on their head because it attracts their attention there, even if they don't seem to be aware, and then hopefully their consciousness will leave that way. That's what Tibetans say. There are probably different Buddhist traditions around the world that have different teachings on that, but I've heard things similar to that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I'll tell you, when I'm ready to die, I'll take notes. And then from my next life, I'll send you a message. Yeah, I'll email you from my next life. Hopefully I won't be reborn as an animal or something. But yeah, if I think of it later, I'll ask the abbot here and see if he's heard about that and what he knows about it. Yeah. Yes. Let me double check the time here. Oh, maybe one more question if there's one more. Yes.
I think in one of the weeks you talked about how in some Buddhist traditions they believe that the karma you could create right now will carry on not into your next life but into the life of someone else because you're not going to exist anymore. So could you elaborate on how that works?
Oh yes, okay. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think. So basically, when I pass away, when I die, Hui Hai no longer exists. Hui Hai is gone. The personality that we call Hui Hai, my body, it's gone. So consciousness with the impression of my karma, like your handprint in wet cement or something like that, that gives rise to a new person. Let's assume that I will be reborn as a human being. So then I'm reborn as a human being, but it's not really me. It's a new human being with its own experiences, its own personality. And so we're not necessarily saying, though, that literally that's true either way, that I am reborn or I am not literally reborn. That isn't the point of discussing that. The point is, if we can think of it this way, that whatever I do in this life that is wrong will cause suffering for a new person in a future life, maybe that will motivate me to behave better. Because, for example, let's say you're a little kid and you do something wrong, but your friend or let's say your best friend gets blamed for it. They're the ones who get in trouble and you don't say anything. How do you feel? Pretty bad, really guilty, right? So if we think of it that way, well, I would feel really horrible knowing that what I did caused someone else pain. That will be motivation for us to practice the Dharma, really, to change our minds. So that's what that's about. So whether or not I Hui Hai, am actually reincarnated, or it's another being entirely.
But then we want to do the best thing out of compassion for the next person.
Right. Out of compassion for that next person who won't know what I did in this life. And when something bad happens to all of us, we think, well, why me? That happens a lot. Now, as a Buddhist, I say, oh, well, it's my karma. But a lot of people, especially when we're little kids and something bad happens, we go, why? And it's probably because of karma from a previous life. Although most of our karma that we create in this life, we experience the results in this life. But whatever unfinished karma we have, that is what shapes our next life. Right? So does that make sense now?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Thanks a lot.
good. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and stop there, and we'll get ready to practice meditation.